welcome to Crime in Court. This is my series, Executed Justice for Justin Root. Today, we are going to be going over the timeline of some of the events that have taken place. So, we've already I've introduced you to the event. I've kind of taken you through the things that led up to what happened in previous episodes, and the very last episode it was just a compilation of all of the interviews with law enforcement that did fire their weapons at Justin Root. So now we're going to kind of take it back a second. We're going to slow it down. I like to go over things chronologically. I think very chronologically. So I put together a PDF that we are going to go through, which is going to go through the timeline and everything. We're going to kind of go over it step by step so that we're not, no stones left unturned. We kind of know where we're at regarding this. So let me shrink myself, please. Hit the like button. Let's begin. This episode is titled A Timeline of Tragedy and the Family's Fight for Justice. So, our incident begins Friday, February 7th, 2020. Justin Root, as you can see pictured, was diagnosed with bipolar and schizoaffective disorder at the age of 19. So he was struggling with those, managing them throughout his life. He was 41 at the time, just FYI. He actually was kind of having a episode. So he had an unscheduled meeting with his therapist at Mass Mental Health, which is in Boston, right across from Brigham and Women's, the morning of the incident, which is February 7th. Something to note about his disorders, he believed that he was law enforcement. So he always carried around a clear plastic gun, or he often did, not always, but he often carried a clear plastic toy paintball gun or something along those lines. He had a holster that he kept it in. So just for reference, the day of the incident, he was wearing a holster, and in that holster he had a clear plastic toy paintball gun. Something that is a toy, harmless, could not cause uh, death it's not a lethal weapon that it was mistaken for, unfortunately, during the incident. He was also exhibiting signs of paranoia and delusions that morning. So it's important to know that and to understand his mental health going into the scene, which, as we know, the law enforcement officers didn't really assess the situation. They knew that there was this mass mental health nearby. Brigham and Women's, I'm sure, has some kind of um, mental health ward as well. So you would think that they might be a little leery about, approaching someone and just assuming that they're dangerous in these areas. But I digress. Let's move on to the next slide here. So same morning. This is near Brigham and Women's. I'm going to have a location on for everything so we have a good timeline and understand where things are. So, possibly due to the paranoia that he was suffering that morning, Root exited his vehicle. He left his vehicle. So, in this picture, I'm going to explain. This is his vehicle right here. The silver car, silver sedan is his vehicle. I'm not sure who this is, but somebody behind him. This person standing, so this is obviously a light pole or something, and then this person standing here with the yellow neon colored jacket, that is a security officer that works for Brigham and Women's Hospital, which is his name is William Thompson or Bill Thompson. So Possibly due to paranoia, Root exited his vehicle and began engaging conversation with this security guard from Brigham and Women's. This guard, Bill Thompson, claims that Root was agitated and spoke nonsensically about law enforcement and flashed his gun at him. That's his version of events. But I couldn't find that in a police report. This is coming from news articles, so take that with a grain of salt or, whatever. I don't know because we weren't there. The only people that were Root and Bill Thompson, and we don't have Root side of the story. The exchange did end in a handshake, which you can see in this image. So obviously this was taken from surveillance, but you can see them shaking hands. So even if this security guard was feeling threatened by Root, he didn't show it in the end. He treated him civilly. He was not, he didn't run from him. He exchanged a handshake with him and left the presence of Root. So you would think that if this guy was really afraid or something, that that would not have occurred. So next, at 9:23, officers received a call from a hospital security guard. It wasn't Bill Thompson. I believe Bill Thompson reported it to somebody else, and then they reported it to the police. So whoever called, the law enforcement officer, said that there was a man carrying a gun. So that becomes a situation that any nearby law enforcement finds as a priority. They all come rushing. Anyone who was nearby came rushing to the scene, including Officer David Godin. He shortly arrives on the scene, and as you can see in this image, so this is Root. This is, I hope you can see my mouse as I'm circling. Root has the black baseball hat on. Almost looks like he has a lanyard or something around his neck, but it might be his shirt or it might be his holster. I'm not sure. But he's wearing a almost looks like a sports coat in this image, but I don't. It's a jacket. And this is the clear plastic toy gun in his hand. As you can see, he started pulling it out, and this officer, who is extremely close to Root, doesn't take cover, doesn't assess the situation, just comes really right up to Root and approaches him up close, shoots him 5 times before he stumbles backwards. So he didn't assess the situation. He didn't try to, find out what was actually occurring. He just goes straight up to him, like, "Hey, you got a gun?" That's not how you police, but okay. So he stumbles back in trying to get out of the situation. You can see him. He fell on the ground there. Root did hold his gun up and aim it at the officer, but again, we know it's a clear plastic toy paint gun. It was not armed, not loaded, not even charged, I guess. I think the family said it wasn't charged, it wasn't loaded. So there was no way that he could even shoot any kind of projectile at this officer, let alone a bullet, a life-threatening bullet. Um, so then we move on. This is the same scene. Down here we can see Officer Godin on the ground, and I believe Root's on the ground as well. I can't make out which is which, but they're both on the ground because Root has been shot and he falls to the ground um, and stumbles. So there's another officer here though, but he does take cover. So this is Officer Michael St. Peter. He takes cover from his vehicle. This was his vehicle. He gets out. He fired 10 rounds at Root right here. So Root, I guess, he does get back up and leave eventually. So he was injured. He fell to the ground alongside Godin, but then Root gets up. His clear plastic handle of the toy gun has been shattered. Or no, sorry, the gun has been shattered. The only thing left in his hand, I believe, is the plastic handle, but that has been shattered because It went through his hand. The bullets went through his hand. He had multiple bullet holes in parts of his hand, his wrist. He was shot up close multiple times in his hand and other areas. We don't know exactly because then he was, fired on by 31 bullets at whatever in 3 seconds. So we don't know which bullets came first, but we do know that he was injured multiple times in his hand. That clear plastic gun that he was holding is shattered. He gets in the car. He gets in his own vehicle and starts to drive away. Before we get on to another location here, we're still at Brigham and Women's during this whole shootout thing when, Godin and Saint Michael St. Peter start shooting at an unarmed, literally an unarmed Root. They did injure a stray bullet, injured the valet that was standing here. You can see in this image I grabbed from excuse me, from one of the surveillance videos. He was standing trying to take cover here in this like doorway area, but then later in the video, now the video is black and white unfortunately, but here you can see him like taking cover behind this car when shots begin to fire. One of the bullets entered his eye. He got struck in the eye. Unfortunately, he did survive, but he was struck, and again by the officers' bullets, not by Root. So Root was not a threat. The only threat here were the officers. We're going to start to move locations now because this incident takes place in various locations. The next location, we're going to be on the move. So the next location is a car chase. So Justin Root gets in his car, and now en route, officers pursue him on a low speed car chase. At first, Justin goes, the speed limit, he's going at a normal pace. At this point, Root has been experiencing significant blood loss. You can imagine that he lost about half of his blood at this point. So he's been shot multiple times. He's already been fired at, I believe the first round was like the St. Peter fired at least 10 rounds, he said, and then I think Godin may have fired 5 or something along those lines. So he was already potentially shot up to 15 times the first time. Well, maybe 14 because the one struck the valet, but at least we know that, he could have been struck multiple times there. So he's experiencing significant blood loss as he's driving away and being chased by the Boston Police Department. Against Boston Police protocol, one of the officers suddenly performed a pit maneuver. We do not have this on camera, or if it ever was on camera, it has been wiped or not turned over to the estate of Justin Root because they never got it. But we have all this other surveillance, but there's no video of the officer doing the pit move, even though he does admit to the pit move. So just pit move is just, if you're unfamiliar, when the officer, hits like a rear quarter panel to try to get the car to that they're chasing to stop. Sure, you're all familiar with it and have seen it in car chases. It's extremely dangerous. It can cause way more accidents than what you intend. It can cause casualties, and you don't want that. You want to not, it also can escalate the situation, which in this situation, that's what it did. You don't want to do this. This is why it is against protocol, but they did it anyways. We're still driving along. We're going from Brigham and Women's to Brookline, which is Brookline is like I've done research. I only know from doing research, so if I'm getting this wrong, please correct me. But I believe Brookline is like a suburb of Boston. So Brigham and Women's is in Boston. Brookline is considered, I guess, like a suburb of Boston. So that is where he's heading now using Huntington Avenue, which is the street, one of the main streets that he takes. I don't know this area. I'm not familiar with it. I'm just trying to report to you the information I've been given. So this pit maneuver, like I said, escalated the car chase. Root begins to speed up, as did the officers. So they actually lost sight of him at this point when he starts to speed up. He collided with multiple cars, at least two or three other vehicles, I want to say. He lost two of his tires, and one other tire was barely hanging on. So, this pit maneuver that this officer did, which goes against protocol, was extremely dangerous. Basically, incapacitated his car to the point where he had one tire left. I mean, that's awful. How can, that's so dangerous. And these other cars that he crashed into on his way to him stopping. So when he collided, that was the end of his end of the chase because his car was no longer workable. So, which leads us to our next location. Now we're at his car breaks down at this shopping center in Brookline. This is at Route 9 and Hammond Street. So Root, no longer able to use his car, stumbles out of his vehicle and collapses in this nearby center. So this was his vehicle here, and there's like this little mulched area near this parking lot, shopping area, which is where he eventually collapses. This is called the Street Chestnut Hill Shopping Center, in case anybody is wondering. Oops, sorry. Shelley McCarthy. Shelley McCarthy happens to be sitting in this parking lot in her car, and she sees Root get out of his car, stumble to the ground. So she's a trained EMT. She comes running to his aid. And at this time when she does this, just like seconds later, officers arrive. So they were like right neck and neck. They arrive at this just about the same time. She approached him first, and then officers approached him shortly thereafter. Six officers approach on foot with their weapons drawn. This is the only body camera, by the way, that we have, and this is about the best image we have of it, which is Officer Figueroa's arm and her firearm. That's about all we see. And when the firing actually happens, you don't see anything because her arm blocks it all. One officer in the body cam footage told McCarthy, sorry, no, that was not in the body cam footage. This is what uh, reported by the EMT and the officers. One of the officers told Shelley McCarthy to run, to get away from Justin, like as if Justin were a threat. He's down on the ground, he's bleeding, he's unconscious, or not unconscious, but he's going almost in and out of consciousness. He's struggling to breathe, and they act like he's a threat, and they tell McCarthy to run. While Root is crouched over on the ground in desperate need of medical attention, another officer approaches and kicks him over. This is the same guy that did the pit maneuver. So we can see just how much empathy this guy has as an officer. So on Friday, February 7th, 2020, at 9:29 a.m., six officers shot 31 bullets at an unarmed, injured slash dying Justin Root. Root was hit 26 times. He was 41 years old at the time. The entire sequence of events, and it lasted only 6 minutes, about roughly 6 minutes. The route that Root traveled was less than 4 miles. So this whole thing could have been avoided, could have not, it didn't need to be, what it became, obviously. And the tactics made by the officers were definitely at fault here, but we're not. getting any justice for that right now, and that's the unfortunate part. So after pulling up at the plaza, the officers unloaded 31 shots in the matter of 3 seconds at an unarmed, injured man without even fully assessing the situation. Like I said, there were so many different things that they could have done to de escalate the situation. They didn't need to use firearms. They could have used, tasers, negotiation. They should have been covered behind vehicles and things to keep cover. And then they could have realized, like, oh, wait, that's not even a real gun. Like they didn't do their due diligence to figure out what the situation actually was. Officers made many mistakes, including not following procedure, the pit maneuver, not hiding behind their vehicle for cover or something behind cover. They not wearing their body worn camera. There were so many procedures that were missed, that they failed on. They endangered the public. Again, that pit maneuver is extremely dangerous. Firing in public, dangerous. Not looking around to your surroundings to see who else was around you before you started firing, which ended up in, injuring the valet. So there were so many different things, I'm just saying, a few examples here. And the whole act of escalating the situations. They started shooting at Root, which was an escalation of the situation. Root wasn't going to shoot at them. They didn't know that. I know, but they didn't need to go straight up to him and be like, "Hey, what's the problem here?" If they thought that he was a problem. You know what I'm saying? They didn't do it appropriately. They did the pit maneuver, which escalated and made him drive faster and caused accidents and caused his vehicle to be so out of control that he crashed and, um, was even more injured. And they continued on the path of injuring Root without even finding out who he was, what was going on, why was he there, why was he wearing a toy gun, like none of that was ever even assessed. And that's a real problem. So, what happens after the incident? We know that this was a multi-jurisdictional investigation. Up first, the first location was the Brigham and Women's Hospital, which is in Boston, which is Suffolk County. I'm probably saying it wrong. I don't say it like a Bostonian, so I apologize. Initially, this was investigated by none other than, as you can see pictured here, Rachel Rollins. She has her own legal issues. She got removed from office and, she had her own legal troubles not related to this case. So during that time, like she originally started investigating this case and then she was removed from office. And then this Kevin Hayden, who is now, I believe, still the current Suffolk County DA, he came on as, I can't think of the word, intermittent, and that's not the right word. Mm, you guys know what I mean. He was he was put in her place temporarily until the election, and then he was elected as the DA after that. So that is Kevin Hayden. He now was in charge of the investigation. So that's Brigham and Women's. That's where the first part of the incident takes place. The shopping center that takes place in Brookline, well, that's Norfolk County. And that's none other than Michael Morrissey, who we all know and love from the Karen Reed and Turtle Boy case. So Michael Morrissey investigated that scene, the scene at the shopping center where all of the officers approached and shot Root 31 times. So, law enforcement interviews. There was a separate episode for this. It was a very long one. If you guys didn't want to listen to it all, I have summarized it here. So there were seven, I think it's six I don't know if I can count, however many officers who fired at Root were interviewed. I believe it was six, and that's a typo. Who fired at Root were interviewed by the Norfolk County DA's office the following week on Wednesday. So the incident takes place February 7th, I believe a Friday, and then the next week, Wednesday, all of the law enforcement officers are interviewed. There's two interviews with Officer David Godin. He's the one that arrived on scene, didn't have any cover. Well, we'll get there. Okay, so the first interview, I'm gonna summarize all the main points so that you guys didn't have to listen to it all if you didn't want to, or this is just a refresher if you did listen to it. So he's the one that arrived at Brigham and Women's. He was first on scene. He approached Root within 3 feet. He says, he admits this. So these are things that he says in his interview. Just FYI, I'm giving you their words. He says he arrived, he approached within 3 feet and didn't take any cover. It actually looked like he was within a foot or two, even closer, within 3 feet. He heard Root say, I'm law enforcement, multiple times he says it. Then he saw Root pull out a gun from his waistband, so he pulled out his own firearm and ordered Root to drop his gun while at the same time firing multiple times. So if you're ordering someone to drop their gun but also firing at the same time, you're not giving them a chance to respond or to even see what they're pulling out of their pocket because it obviously wasn't a gun. So trying to back up, Godin believes that or says that he fell backwards and he thought at that time that Root was going to kill him with his paintball gun. After Root took off, he pursued him in his vehicle until the Brookline scene. Immediately, he started yelling at the woman aiding Root to get back. So he admits him and other officers started yelling at Shelley McCarthy to get away from Root. He says that Root was in a seated position being ordered to lie down. He remembers Root reaching with his right hand into his jacket and someone yelling, "Gun." The line formation of officers, including Godin, all discharged their weapons. When asked by the interviewer about his body worn camera, Godin states that he was assigned one but was not wearing it at the time. He said that it was in his duty bag. Remember that, that's important. Next law enforcement officer is Michael St. Peter. He was assigned to the canine unit that day. He had his dog Duke with him. He was at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. He says he saw someone who appeared to have a firearm in his hand and in some sort of a struggle. Those are quotes. He took cover behind a vehicle, told Root to drop his gun, and he fired. That's when he fired about 10 rounds. Root falls to the ground at that point. So he didn't fall when Godin first fired, but he fell after the 10 rounds from St. Peter. He says that Root was, quote, retreating to his vehicle, and I find it very interesting. This is a key point I noticed so I'm pointing out things that I noticed uh, in the interviews that were concerning to me. So he said, yeah, Root was retreating. He used the word retreating. But then another officer in the room, I'm not sure who it was because they didn't identify themselves. They said he tries to correct this by saying, well, when you say Root was retreating, you really mean that he was fleeing, right? And St. Peter's like, oh, yeah, yeah, that's what I meant. Because fleeing and retreating from gunshot and fleeing from officers are two different things. And that's why they had to make that distinction, I think. But anyways, that's just a something that I noticed during the interview. Anyways, he says that Michael St. Peter, once Root gets back in his car, he pursued him in his vehicle. In Brookline, he heard shots. So he arrives in Brookline after shots already take place, he says. So he retrieved his dog. And then when he walked closer to Root, he learned, in his words, that Root was not viable anymore. So he basically, stuck around with his dog and waited it out until the scene was cleared and stuff, and then he took his dog back into the car. So that was that. That was St. Peter. He did have a large role in that he shot Justin Root at Brigham and Women's, but then he didn't have really a role at the Brookline scene. The next officer we have is Corey Thomas. He arrived at the Brookline scene, so he missed the whole Brigham and Women's. He arrives at the Brookline scene, says that he was giving commands to get on the ground and show us your hands to Root. He says that he could not see Root's hands, but he said his arms were moving erratically, like flailing, moving erratically, and but he couldn't see his hands. He repeated that multiple times. He said that he had heard one round fired, presumed that that was Root firing, so he discharged his weapon, which he thinks was about 3 to 5 rounds. So that was Corey Thomas. Next officer is Joseph McManamy. Mac Mac McManamy. Sorry, said the wrong thing. McManamy. He's got a hard name. He converged into the line of other officers during the chase to Brookline. So again, he missed the whole Brigham and Women's scene. The only two that we know of that were there were St. Peter and Godin. Everybody else seems to just arrive at the Brookline scene. He says that he tried in his uh, interview, he used the word tried to pit maneuver Root. No, sir, you didn't try, you did. You actually did, which is against protocol, and you shouldn't have done it. And I'm sure that he's faced no consequences for it, but that led to multiple injuries of other people and Root's demise, basically. So, Root's vehicle, after this pit maneuver stopped, according to Joseph McMenemy, he says that Root's vehicle stopped alongside his. They made eye contact, and then Root just took off at a higher speed. At this point, officers lost sight of Root. He says that he quickly caught up to the crash scene of the suspect's vehicle. So at this point, he catches up because Root crashed his car. He saw Root stumbling towards the shopping plaza. He sees the woman going towards him, and who has approached him already, and he starts yelling at the woman to get away. So this McMenemy is the one who does the pit maneuver. He yells at the woman to get away, who's just an innocent bystander trying to administer some medical attention to someone who is clearly in need. And he also is the one that kicks him to the ground. He's the first officer to approach Root on scene. He says he was yelling at Root to get on the ground and to show me your hands. And he sees Root crouched on the ground. He uses the terms standing but crouched down. They want to make it seem like he's a threat. They have to make it seem like he was standing or trying to get up or whatever. This is a consistent theme that was throughout their interviews. Another consistent theme was, oh, yeah, we saw him reaching for the gun. Left hand did this, right hand did that. We saw that. So there's the only one that was inconsistent, I believe, was Corey Thomas, which he said that he didn't see the hands, but we'll get there. We'll get there. I have some info on him. Okay, so when Root didn't get to the ground after this verbal command from McMenemy, he says that McMenemy got real close, put his leg up, and kicked him down to the ground with his left leg. So he is the one that kicked Root down to the ground. He believes Root stood back up or got on one knee. He believes. I believe he's lying. He says next, Root uses his left hand to go in his jacket, revealing a pistol in a holster. Root says, he says that Root's left hand went into the jacket while the right hand reached towards the pistol when McMenemy fired 4 to 10 rounds, like point blank, very up close. Said the suspect's hands were still moving after the verbal commands. So he's got to say these things to indemnify himself. Otherwise, he doesn't get immunity. Immunity. He's not following protocol. He's got to say these things because it basically saves him by saying, "Oh yeah, his hands were moving still after I told him to get down," and the verbal commands and blah blah blah. Like it protects them by throwing in these little one-liners. All right, the next officer is Leroy Fernandez. He arrived at the Brookline scene again, not the Brigham and Women's. He sees the suspect reach into his jacket, and then shots were fired. He thought that Root was going to shoot him or other officers. Another common theme that everybody liked to throw into their interviews was, "Oh, I thought he was going to shoot me or the other officers or someone innocent." He said that Root was trying to stand, again, with that line, which no one else, no other bystander said that. So it was just the officers. There was a bystander who had a phone or some kind of device that was recording the incident, and Leroy Fernandez told that bystander to move back. Where that video is, I do not know if that was ever retrieved, but that'd be interesting what he caught on there. Next officer is Brenda Figueroa. She repeatedly said in her interview, we begged him to get down, like begged him, like you're begging someone. No, there was no negotiation, there was no begging. It was just, you guys shot. You didn't do your due diligence or anything. You just shot first, ask questions later. That's what it was. Anyways, so after this, she says that she saw, quote, this person smirk or laugh. She's referring to Root. She's saying this person, referring to Root, saying that he smirked or laughed after they begged him to get down. There was no time. When did this happen? When did he smirk? When did they say get down and then wait for him to get down? When did that ever happen? I'd like answers to that. She says that she saw an object coming out. This is how she refers to the weapon that he had, supposedly. And she got really emotional at this point in the interview. She starts crying. Then she says that she was afraid that she was going to get shot. Playing up the emotions, playing up the girl tears. I call BS. I'm sorry, but no. This didn't happen. You can even see it on her body worn camera. She just goes running up and shooting. Like, where's the begging? Yes, they do yell, get down, or, whatever, but it's like simultaneously as they're shooting. Next, she fired because she thought it was her or someone innocent that would get hurt. Another repetitive line that they've all said in their interviews. She said she approached Root with MSP Trooper to secure their firearm and handcuff Root. So after the 31 shots and he was no longer a threat, as they call him, uh, they went to, handcuff him, secure the weapon that wasn't a weapon. She says that she remembers seeing a black gun. She was in shock. She doesn't remember where or when she saw the black gun, but she just remembers that it happened. And it happened so fast, so you can't. And she was in shock, so I don't ask me any more questions about the black gun. It's basically her answer. At the end of the interview, this part was interesting. At the end of the interview, when she was asked what else was around her in the shopping plaza, she literally laughs and jokes with the officers in the room and says, there was a CVS. And she remembers that because she needed a ginger ale because her stomach was so upset after everything that just took place. I am not kidding you. Like, she was laughing. Like, huh, I remember that because my stomach was so upset. I needed a ginger ale. Woman, you just shot and killed someone who was absolutely innocent. Yeah, maybe your stomach was upset because of that. I don't know. The fact that you just killed an innocent man. Maybe that's why you needed the ginger ale. I don't know. These people. Next officer we have is so all of those people were with Boston Police. This is Massachusetts State Police Trooper Paul Keneally. That's how you say it. He was called he says that he called the station. So while he's en route chasing, he gets a call. And he somehow gets pulled into this car chase thing. So while he's en route chasing Root, he decides that he's going to call the station to confirm if an officer indeed was shot. I don't believe this, but this is what he says. In this like heat of the moment, I don't know if that would have occurred to other people, or I don't know. But I mean, maybe that's part of the job that you have to be on top of things like that, but I don't see this as being truthful to me. He says while he's en route, he calls to confirm that there was indeed an officer who was shot. He does not say in this interview whether he was told that an officer was shot or what they told him. He doesn't say. He doesn't tell us what his frame of mind was going into this. So and they didn't ask. So I think that was a big mistake there. He says that when he arrived, he's the senior, by the way. He's like the eldest senior officer when they all arrive on scene. So people start taking orders from him. Plus, he's state police versus Boston. So I guess maybe they just were like, okay, we'll take orders from him. I don't know. But he's the one that, like, after all is said and done and everyone's arrived on the scene, everyone starts taking orders from Paul. He says when he arrived at Brookline, he was going to tackle Root at first before he heard someone say that he's got a gun. So then he was not going to tackle him. He stopped himself at that point. He says that Root was on one knee, he remembers, and they were giving commands. He saw a hand come up and thought that they were all going to get shot, he says. Again, that same line over and over again. After the threat was over, those were his words, he and Officer Brenda Figueroa approached with gloves on. Keneally told Figueroa, listen to this. Paul Keneally told Brenda Figueroa to take Root's right hand. She took, and he took the left hand. He said that Figueroa took possession of the weapon because the gun, the weapon was supposedly in Root's right hand. So she said in her interview, remember, she saw a black gun. She doesn't remember when, where, how, why, just that, oh, it was such a traumatic day. I can't remember anything. Yes, there was a black gun, but oh my gosh, I don't remember. Here, Paul Keneally is saying he specifically gave the order, Figueroa, you take his right hand. She took his right hand. She takes possession of the gun. She gives the gun over to Paul Keneally. These are his words. So Figueroa took possession of the gun, then he took control of the gun, but because it was bloody, full of blood, his gloves were bloody, the gun was bloody, he says, he dropped the gun in the mulch area. hmm This gun, by the way, this gun happens to be a black BB gun that they find on the scene, but happens to be found in pristine condition and other things that make it seem like that's not even true. And we know that the gun that was in Justin's hand was actually the toy plastic gun because that's the one that was shattered. So at the time of the original incident, that's what he had in his hand. But now all of a sudden at this Brookline scene, he has a BB gun, a black BB gun, which that's what they're saying. Um, yeah, so he says he dropped this black BB gun in the mulch. He also said, which I thought was just an interesting phrase, he said in his interview, I thought he was going to blast us. Like, what are you in some kind of movie or video game? Like, why are you talking like that? You're an officer of the law? Don't talk like he's going to blast us. Sorry. That just really irked me. Next, we have our second interview with Boston police officer David Godin. So, this second interview comes because there was some further review of body worn cameras, and we find out that uh, David Godin might not have been truthful in his first interview. So, after further review, body worn camera shows that Officer Godin was wearing his body worn camera that day, but he placed it in his vehicle upon arriving at the scene. Why would you do that? If you're supposed to have your body worn cameras on and turn them on in a crisis, not take them off and put them in your vehicle. And also remember, he said it wasn't on him that day and it was in his duty bag. So during this second interview, it was a shorter interview, but this is all they really wanted to talk about. He was shown images of him himself wearing this body worn camera. So he wasn't shown the video or anything. There has maybe video came out later, but at least there were images of him wearing his body worn camera that day, prior to the incident. He states, though, that to the best of his memory, he was not wearing his body worn camera that day, didn't have it activated, blah, blah, blah. Of course, you're going to say that because, oh, it's the best of my memory, so I wasn't lying when I said it the first time. And then no one in that interview asked any questions about why he removed it, why he didn't turn it on, why he put it in his car, nothing. Nothing about that. So they were just like, "Oh, okay, you lied about wearing your body worn camera, but that was your memory at the time. Oh, okay. No biggie. Let's move on. You're fine." So those were the interviews. I wanted to make sure that you guys, if you missed that episode or just needed a refresher, it helps me also to go over and like remember things when I go over things multiple times. So I wanted to give you guys a refresher on the law enforcement interviews. So guess what? Guess what happens now? Morrissey finds no misconduct. March 20th, 2020, in just 30 days of a review, DA Morrissey released a 14-page report, which we will eventually read on this channel. He releases a 14-page report clearing all the officers of any wrongdoing. Morrissey claims that a black handgun, as it's referred to in his report, it's called a Crossman C11 pellet or BB gun. He says that this black handgun was found at the scene. However, there are several details that are disputed about that within the lawsuit from Jennifer Root Bannon, and also what we know now, going, from after this report was released, we know more and have uh, more to dispute about that BB gun. He stated in his report, "I find that the use of force by police in Brookline was objectively reasonable and justified." So of course, we we investigated ourselves. We find we did nothing wrong. We're good. And it only took him, like I said, 30 days to come to that conclusion. About that black gun, I told you there was more. So there were some major discrepancies. Different claims regarding its location. So, based on the different interviews from law enforcement, people said it was recovered from a shoulder holster. Others said it was removed from Root's right hand. Someone else said it was recovered from underneath him. And another one said that it fell from Root's chest area. Meaning, they can't all be telling you the truth. So, something's not right there. We also had different claims as to who found it. Keneally states Figueroa retrieved it from Root's right hand. Figueroa she never agrees to this. She never states this. In fact, she says that she doesn't remember when or where or in what situation she saw it. Just that she remembers seeing a gun. She just doesn't remember how, when she saw it. More discrepancy. But if you are the one that took it out of his hand, I'm sure you would remember that that's how you encountered that gun originally. But I guess maybe not if you're in shock. I don't know. But if you're in shock in this situation, should you be a police officer? I don't know. It's another good question. All right, so discrepancies regarding its condition. Keneally states that it was bloody, despite no blood being found on it after forensic analysis. It was in a pristine condition. There were also no defects or there was no damage to it, but we know that there were injuries to Root's right hand, including through the palm of his hand, suggesting that whatever he was holding would have been damaged as well. So the gun in his hand that was damaged was the clear plastic gun, not this black BB gun that they can't even tell you when or where it was found or who found it. See the problem there? So, as you can see, there's reason for the family to fight for justice for Justin because something's not adding up right. So in August of 2020, so March, the DA Morrissey, came out and said, "We did nothing wrong." By August, the family files a complaint. Jennifer Root Bannon filed a 35-page wrongful death lawsuit against the city of Boston and all of the officers involved. And we will read that. I promise we're going to read that in a future episode. Um, So moving along through the timeline, December 7th, I'm just trying to hit the major legal points. So there's a lot of things that come up in the family's legal battle. So I'm trying to hit the major things that I think are really important to lead us up until present day. So December 7th, 2020, the city of Boston's motion to dismiss is filed. They cite the lack of specificity about the training deficiencies to dismiss the municipal count. So there's the city of Boston that she's suing, and also the officers. So those city of Boston, the municipal charges, that's what they were trying to get removed or dismissed, but the court identifies 13 different areas of inadequate training and policies that the city failed to enforce. So he denies that dismissal. Or she, I think it was a he. December 5th, 2022. So now we are, whoops, things don't move very fast in civil lawsuits. So now we're going to move on. This is 2 years later, December 7th. Now we're at 2020. Now we're at December 5th, 2022. There's the district court denies the motion for summary judgment. So Judge Richard G. Steins denies Jennifer Root Bannon's motion for summary judgment. Basically, she's seeking that the judge just makes a ruling that the officer's use of force was unreasonable in this case. He denies that. Instead, Stearns grants the defendant's motion for a summary judgment. So they had dual summary judgment motions. Um, and he grants the one for the defendants, saying that they are protected under their qualified immunity. So everything they did was under their job, and they were just acting out daily, their duties. That was it. So that's how the judge found that in 2022, which is a total bummer. Uh, Shortly thereafter, I didn't have the exact date, the family, Jennifer Root Bannon, files an appeal, and she argues in court, or she argues that the district court erred in weighing the evidence in favor of the defendants. So that was December 2022 to January 2023, shortly thereafter, the dismissal of the summary judgment or denial of the summary judgment. Um, I went backwards, sorry. So that's kind of where they're at there. So January 2023, they are appealing the district court's ruling. But do you remember, this is kind of out of place from the family legal battles, but this comes in right here in the timeline. So remember that multi-jurisdictional investigation that they had? Yeah, so the DA came out within 30 days, right, with his, yeah, we didn't do anything wrong. Well, we still haven't heard. This is 2 years later, and we still haven't heard from Suffolk County until now. So the ADA, so the Assistant District Attorney John Dawley, on February 2020, or in the month of February 2023, approximately 1 year later. Why does that say 1 year? This is years later. This is years later. Sorry. The incident happened in 2020, so this is 3 years later. Dolly, do I have that right? I'm going to have to double check that. Hold on. Okay. I just wanted to verify my own. Sometimes you gotta double check your own work. So, yes, on February 13th, this report was released, 2023. So, this was 3 years after the incident, 1 year after uh, the notice of appeal. So, 1 year after the family appealed the lower court's decision. Then we finally get an answer 3 years later from ADA John Dawley, who finally gives his report. It's a lengthy report that he says that basically he has similar conclusions to Michael Morrissey, stating that they didn't think that the officers did anything wrong, and of course DA Kevin Hayden weighs in and agrees. In his report, Dawley stated that the officers both thought Root had a firearm and thought that he heard him fire it, and he concluded there were no violations of a criminal offense and charges should not be sought. Well, the family has a right to somehow to make things right after what happened to their family member, I think. And just because the DA says, no, they did everything right, I just don't think that that's, especially when the DA is investigating their own people, their own law enforcement. So, continuing on with the family's legal battle, we're almost done here, just FYI. So, the family's legal battle, April 22nd, 2024. So now time goes very slowly, like I said, in these criminal or civil proceedings. So now we're 4 years after the fact, and there's uh, an affirmation from the first. So it goes, just so you know, it goes the district court. Then you've got your First Circuit Court of Appeals, which is where this case is now at this point. They're waiting for the answer from the Court of Appeals, which took forever and over a year. And then you've got the higher courts, federal court, so or U.S. Supreme Court. So it's right now the First Circuit affirmed the district's ruling. So what was originally uh, the decision basically to trash on the Root family and just say, yeah, cops can do whatever they want whenever they want type of mentality. The First Circuit Court of Appeals also has that mentality, I guess, because Judge Sandra Lynch affirmed the district court's summary judgment in favor of the defendants. There was a partial dissent by a Judge Laura Calvo, which we're probably not going to read. If we do get into that, we might read some of it, but we're not going to read all of it. I just find U.S. Supreme Court rulings kind of lengthy and hard to get through all of the uh, all of the legal terminology and stuff. But we can certainly read through some of the things to make our storyline as we go through make sense. Um, Next, the next thing that happens within the family's legal battle is April and May 2024. There's a petition for rehearing. So Bannon files a petition for reconsideration, basically citing that the panel misapplied summary judgment, the standards for summary judgment, and erred on the deadly force analysis. Basically, they were wrong in that. stating that, they did use deadly force. June 10th, 2024, petition for a rehearing is denied. So, Supreme Court, they don't really need to give you a reason. They can just deny you outright and say denied. And that is what happened June 10th, 2024. September 9th, 2024, a petition for writ of certiorari, or however you say that, something like that. Basically, this is asking for, basically, so Bannon's asking, Root Bannon, who's pictured there, that is his sister, Jennifer Root Bannon, and Justin's father. Also, they were standing out and demanding an independent investigation for Justin Root. Sign the petition below if you haven't already done so. So at this point, September 9th, 2024, Bannon asks the U.S. Supreme Court to review the First Circuit Court of Appeals decision. So now we're on, the third layer of the court system and asking them to um, overturn or whatever, not necessarily overturn, but give them the opportunity to be heard again or whatever might, remedy might come of hearing this again because the feds have not, or the, I keep saying the feds, the U.S. Supreme Court has not heard this yet, and they refuse to. So on January 13th, 2025, the petition is denied. Supreme Court denies basically their petition for reconsideration, the writ of cert. And then the February 7th, the next thing that happens is they ask for a rehearing. Bannon asks the U.S. Supreme Court to reconsider yet again. And March 10th of this year, rehearing is denied by the Supreme Court. They do not give a reason. And that is where we are left off with, I don't know what the next step is for them. I'm hoping that they have some more opportunities to be heard about this because what they did to Justin is immoral, in my opinion. And the cover up is even worse. What they did to him is horrific. But the fact that they just continue and continue to cover one another's asses. The judges as well. The judges cover the cops' asses, and I don't understand why. Make them accountable. It makes me so angry that we never get to see justice. So some of the key facts that were ignored by the courts were the reliability of the officers' accounts. So everyone except for Corey Thomas, remember I said I had something about him? Everyone, all those officers, with the exception of Corey Thomas, were meeting with lawyers and other law enforcement agents before their interviews took place. The only one that didn't, Corey Thomas, is the one that said, I didn't see his hands, but his arms were flailing, but I didn't see his hands. But every other officer said, oh, he had his gun in his right hand, he opened his jacket with his left, and he was reaching for the gun with his right. Every single officer said that. So, sounds like they were coached, doesn't it? All the descriptions suggest a coordination of statements, especially between everyone except for Corey Thomas. The condition of the gun was pristine, the BB gun, versus the officer's account. So there's a lot of things that were ignored. They also had conflicting accounts of the BB gun's location. Like I said, there were at least 4 or 5 different places where the gun was supposedly seen by officers for the first time. Body worn cameras. No one has heard yelling gun in the body worn camera footage that we have. So this contradicts Michael Morrissey's report that says someone yelled gun. That was a big key thing where, oh, someone said gun, so obviously they thought he had a gun, so they shot him, so they were justified. Case closed. Well, if no one said gun and no one thought he had a gun or saw him pull the gun out, just he was reaching for it, I don't know. It's just none of it makes sense. You know what I'm saying? And then the lack of body worn camera footage of the incident. So that is something that the courts never took into consideration regarding the way that the events were described by law enforcement officers versus what video footage we do have, the fact that one of the officers lied about their body worn camera and removed it, and also the fact that we have a very limited view of any kind of body worn camera that we do have, and it's basically of a woman's arm and nothing else. So we don't even know what happened. So those are also key factors. Like, you're supposed to have these things recorded. You're supposed to have your body worn cameras on. You're supposed to be wearing them and have them on, and turn them on in the event of an incident. You're not supposed to take them off. So all these things were ignored, and protocol was, they weren't acting in good faith when they were doing these things. So how come they can be immune from their actions is what I want to know. More key facts that the courts ignored: potential misidentification or confusion, or even planting of the BB gun. So, all of the discrepancies of the BB gun and the gun's placement, the location, the condition of it, they all suggest that law enforcement maybe misidentified the paintball gun as a BB gun. So, maybe they possibly covered their asses with that, or because of that, and so they put a BB gun at the scene, perhaps. There were also two additional paintball guns in Justin Root's car. They were found in his vehicle. So this strongly suggests that he was carrying a yet another paintball gun, and that this BB gun was not even his. Root's mental health was never taken into consideration, especially by the courts or the officers. So Root's mental health history suggests his actions were influenced by mental health, not an intent to hurt anyone. He wasn't trying to, scare people, hold people up with his gun, he was not doing anything of that sort. And officers didn't employ any kind of de-escalation tactics or techniques to assess the situation, to assess his mental health, to assess if he was really a threat. None of that was done. They just went in there, guns blazing, and didn't care. They did not care about the public safety, about Justin's safety, about their own safety. They went right up to him. So nothing they did was by the book here. Some more key facts that they didn't consider: civilian witness testimony about Root's physical condition. So, this is a big one. Shelley McCarthy testified. So, this is the EMT. Remember, the Good Samaritan that got out of her car at the shopping plaza and ran to Root to try to administer some kind of aid to him. She says he was lying on the ground, covered in blood. She said he was struggling to breathe, making gurgling noises, and gurgling blood. So, how are you a super duper threat to the cops that you need 31 bullets when you're lying on the ground, covered in blood, gurgling blood, struggling to breathe? She says he was disoriented. His eyes were bouncing around like ping pong balls until they rolled to the back of his head. That does not sound like someone who is a threat to me. She says that he kept his right hand on his chest and his left hand by his side. So his right hand was on his chest, probably because his heart was bleeding at this point, and his chest cavity was filling up with blood. And he was struggling to breathe because of that. So his hand was on his chest, his right hand, left hand by his side. She says that he did not attempt to get up at any time, and she says he absolutely could not have stood up, even if he wanted to, due to his weakened condition. So, all those things that the officer said, oh, he was standing up, he was trying to get up, he was kneeling, he was whatever. No, no, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't, he was struggling. severely struggling to live at this point in time, and officers didn't even care. It's very disturbing. I want you all, if you have not already done so, go to justinroot.com. That's JUSTON, root.com, and sign the petition in support of an independent investigation into Root's death. This would, if ever granted, this would open an independent investigation from the DA's office. Not that Morrissey would be the investigator. Opening an independent investigation by a third party is what the family is asking for. No more investigating yourself. Let's get some people here that know what they're talking about, can analyze this with no skin in the game, and can tell us what happened here and was protocol followed. And we know it wasn't, so how was it broken? Is basically what they're asking for. So please go sign that petition. And I leave you with we are just one. This is how Justin liked to he used to say, just add the E at the end of his name, and we're just one. He was always trying to unite everyone and make everyone feel like they are a part of something and to be part of this world, to be accepted and to be acknowledged. And I think that that's what he was ultimately trying to do. He never intended to hurt anybody. His mental health may have impacted his behavior that day, but it wasn't who he was. And he struggled with it, but he was from all intents and purposes, from what family members and loved ones have said, he was just a loving, wonderful person who wanted everyone to get along and to be happy and to laugh and to smile. And that is why we need to call for that independent investigation, because that family is missing him and he should be here right now. But because he's not, that family is hurting and they need that independent investigation. So please, please go over there, sign that petition if you haven't already done so,